I'm Morgana Evelyn, and today I want to share a cool new build with you all. Now I get asked all the time on stream and in the comments about my playtime in BG3, so let me answer that now by saying I've got over 100 honor mode wins under my belt and over 2,000 hours in the game. With that being said, I recently added a lot more hours researching and testing this build. I personally believe that the Giant Barbarian will be one of the strongest subclasses coming into patch 8. While simple on paper, all the damage riders and item interactions add so much complexity to this class. For example, with Elemental Cleaver and just a few cold items, you can freeze the enemy in just 2 or 3 hits. And with the enemy frozen, you can smash them for double the bludgeoning damage with another throw or by literally kicking them. Not to mention, with each throw, you spread ice across the battlefield, making the enemy slip and miss their turns. Let's go over the pros and cons of the Path of the Giant's Barbarian. Pros: it is capable of consistently high damage thanks to Tavern Brawler, adding your strength modifier twice to the attack rolls and damage. And yes, it does add itself on to Elemental Cleaver damage as well. Contrary to what a wizard might tell you, gravity is the strongest skill of magic, as you can insta-kill most enemies with a throw or a kick. You are absurdly tanky with lots of HP and damage resistance when you rage. You also have great crowd control with ice surfaces. Both slipping and freezing enemies can remove their turn entirely. You are also literally a giant with an all-new suplex animation, and I cannot express in words how satisfying the kick sound is. The class is even strong enough to take on honor mode solo, and on top of everything else, there is so much variety in gearing and level split, but more on that later. Okay, I'm not completely biased. Here are the cons I personally found with the build. In the early game, you have low initiative, and enemies generally act first. And lastly, you have to wait until level 6 to gain your subclass identity, which until then, you are a weaker copy of a Berserker Barbarian with the returning pike. You'll find video timestamps and a written version of this build in the description, but in this video I want to explain the ability and item synergies I've been researching and testing. With that being said, let me show you how I built a Path of the Giant's Barbarian to crush honor mode and Baldur's Gate 3. In all honesty, origin doesn't matter, so play where you like. For this video, we will pick Karlach because I know a lot of you will try this build on her, as she starts as a barbarian. Who but everyone? Isn't this a frost giant build? Mama K is hot, right? Yes, I know, sweetie. That's why we're going to cool her heart down with a couple of cold items. For stats, you have 2 options here. If you want to keep your natty status, I recommend 17 strength. What's this, an odd number? Trust the process. 14 dex with +2 to initiative roll and AC. 16 con for unarmored defense, giving us a +3 to AC, not to mention increasing our health pool. Int and charisma are dump stats, with wisdom being 10 for saving throws. If you want to take performance enhancing supplements instead, we're going to dump that strength and allocate 16 dexterity for +3 to initiative rolls and our AC, 17 con, which will be rounded up early game, and for your remaining points, you can crank your charisma for dialogue checks, but here I chose to add 14 to wisdom for +2 to common saving throws. Lastly, if you have the option to take athletics here, do so, as they help with your shove and throw checks. On to leveling. For level 2, we gain Reckless Attack. This gives you attacks advantage until your next turn, with the downside of enemies also having advantage against you. I highly recommend using this whenever you can for more damage, as the downside can be offset with the physical damage mitigation of Rage. At level 3, we gain our subclass, Path of the Giants, meaning we can Giant's Rage during battle. Our size increases, and with that also our weight. I don't know about you, but I'd find it pretty hard to shove a big woman like that. We also gain resistance to physical damage, increasing our survivability by quite a lot, which helps because the AI generally likes to target party members with the lower AC. Another benefit of Giant's Rage is advantage on strength checks, meaning your throws and your kicks are super effective. Lastly, your rage damage is doubled on throw attacks. This might not sound like a lot, but it's actually quite busted with our later class features. Out of combat, we gain Vapax Grade, increasing carrying capacity by a quarter, which is handy for carrying all your ammunition, and of course the party's essentials. And lastly, for level 3, the Thaumaturgy cantrip, which gives advantage on intimidation and performance checks, which can help you out of a sticky situation. Moving on to level 4, we gain a massive power spike thanks to the Tavern Brawler feat. With Tavern Brawler, your strength modifier is added twice to the damage and attack rolls on unarmed, improvised weapon, and thrown attacks. Let me repeat that because this is important for the core of this build. The modifier Fire is added twice. At 18 strength early game, that's a +8 to your attack and damage rolls for weapon throws. And late game at 27 strength, that's a whopping +16 to your attack and damage rolls. Not to mention, this is a damage rider source, which means we can get silly multiple numbers, but more on that at level 6. Depending on which stat allocation you picked earlier, we can round strength to 18 or constitution to 18 here. Level 5 is a massive breakpoint for martials, as we get an extra attack, and yes, that includes throwing. Our movement speed is also increased by 3 meters, but here's where it gets fun. Boots of the Giants. For a bonus action, we can kick a target away. The chance depends on our athletics, which is why we invested into that at level 1. You can kick targets up to twice the weight that shoving would allow. Now here's where it gets spicy. This damage scales with unarmed damage. With items in Tavern Brawler, check out our kick damage. If the damage for a bonus action hasn't sold you, the sound is absolutely kino. There are many uses for the kick. For example, instant kills into the environment, high damage falls, and even kicking your enemies closer to your allies or away from them. My dearest viewer, we have made it. Level 6 is where Giant Barb gains its identity, and a huge part of that is Elemental Cleaver. Elemental Cleaver can only be used when you range, and when you do, you can apply any of the following elements to your weapon: acid, cold, fire, lightning, and thunder. Changing in between elements does not cost any action or bonus action, so you can change freely on the fly. The weapon you use Elemental Cleaver on gains a thrown property. Yes, that means any weapon can return to you, even a big greatsword, so let your imagination run wild. Now that I have your attention, let me tell you, this elemental damage is crazy. The Tavern Brawler DRS adds on to the damage, leading to some incredible numbers. Add in vulnerabilities such as wet, and suddenly this number doubles. Yep, Elemental Cleaver is one of my cases for why I believe Giant Barb is a top contender for damage. Thanks LostSoul for saving, well, my sanity during this project. Regarding the on-hit weapon effects of thrown attacks, due to the game's coding, the majority of them do not work. Spoilers, I actually did find a working weapon in the video. However, I'm offering a $100 bounty to anyone who manages to find more working on-hit effects with a thrown weapon. If you're interested, the details can be found in the pinned comment. At level 7, Feral Instincts adds a +3 to initiative, and we can't be surprised. This is great because it really solves our initiative pain point. Level 8, we gain another fate, and I'll recommend Tough, which gives 2 HP for every level. It might not sound like much, but trust me, you'll become a giant raid boss with incredible survivability. From here, you have 2 paths, and from my testing, both are very strong and valid. It really just boils down to personal preference. Let me ask you a question. Do you prefer kicking or throwing your enemies? Let's start off with the kicking build. The damage is no slouch whatsoever and can scale pretty crazily. For this first variant, we're going to multiclass the rogue and stick with it until max level. At level 9, we gain expertise, and without a doubt, you'll be picking athletics here to help you with your throws, kicks, and shoving checks. The next rogue level, we gain some bonus action abilities that give us utility during battle. Hide can be useful in a darkness party to abuse AI. Dash can close the gap for a throw. And disengage if you're moving on to level 11, we get our Thief subclass, granting us an extra bonus action, allowing us another kick per turn. We also gain resistance to falling damage, because you know nothing surprises the enemy more than a giant woman jumping off the roof to throw you into the river.
Do you seek help?
At level 12, we gain a feat. Here I picked ability score improvement to increase my dexterity for a +1 to AC and initiative rolls. For the throw variant of the build, we're going to stay Barbarian for a little bit longer. At level 9, you gain brutal critical. When you land a critical hit, you roll an extra damage die. Do note that this only works on melee attacks. Level 10 is our last level in Barbarian, gaining mighty impel. For the cost of a bonus action, we can throw creatures or objects. The heavier the creature or object, the more damage it deals. With the last 2 levels, we're going to go fighter. At level 11, you pick up a fighting style here, but none of them are relevant to our build, so pick the one of the picture you like the most. And at level 12, our final level, we gain action surge, giving us an extra action during battle. Incredibly useful for setting up extra damage or getting yourself out of trouble. Let's go over the gear from top to bottom on the character screen, starting with the haste helm, which is found in a locked chest next to the blighted village waypoint. The wearer gains momentum for 3 turns at the start of combat, increasing movement by 4.5 meters. This gives a great boost in mobility at the start of combat, allowing us to get into position for reckless attack or higher ground for more throw damage. Do note that the additional move speed does degrade over the next 2 turns. Our chest piece is the protecty sparkswall. This item is found in the Grimforge, and I highly recommend this shortcut of either jumping or misty stepping onto this ledge to find the protecty sparkswall in the chest. The wearer gains a +1 to AC and saving throws as long as they have lightning charges. Where are the lightning charges coming from? Oh, good question, sweetheart. I'll answer you in the next gear piece. For the gloves, we're going to go with the sparkle hands. To get the sparkle hands, you have to fight woodwoads and ancient mud methods in the swamp. This is a pretty tough fight, so do come in prepared. But here are some tips that might help. All the methods explode on death, and when you kill the ancient one, the young ones explode. So I recommend throwing them or kicking them away. If you're having trouble with the woodwoads, fire damage completely negates the regeneration ability. Once you have dealt with the enemies, you can find the sparkle hands in a chest near the tree stump. On a hit with an unarmed attack, gain 2 lightning charges. And guess what? They work with thrown attacks. When you have more than 5 charges, they are consumed, and you deal an additional 1d8 lightning. Oh, but Evelyn, what about the gloves of uninhibited kushigo? They add a 1d4 to throw damage, right? 1d4 might sound like more on paper than the sparkle hands, but the reason I prefer the sparkle hands is because it's a very big damage rider source on thrown objects and will synergize stupidly with our Act 2 weapon choice, granting us 4 lightning charges per throw instead of 2, but more on that later. For our necklace, we're going to go with the periapt wound closure, which is purchased from Esfa in the Mountain Pass. This is mainly for potent healing, which heals for the maximum value whenever you use a potion, increasing our tankiness and sustain even more. And as a bonus, in the very unlikely event you're downed in combat, this neck piece will automatically stabilize you. For our rings, the first slot is the Ring of Flinging, which is purchased from Aaron at the Druid Grove. It gives us +1d4 to thrown damage, and more damage is always good. Our second ring is the Caustic Band, purchased from Derek Bonecloak in the Myconid colony. It simply adds +2 acid damage onto our attacks. Next are our boots. The disintegrating nightwalkers can be found off near the drow, who is located behind the rubble in the Grimforge. Defeat him in order to obtain these boots. I highly recommend hold person or throwing or kicking him into the lava. The wearer of the disintegrating nightwalkers can't be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared. They cannot slip on grease or ice, which will be great for a little later, as we will be creating ice everywhere. For our main hand weapon, unfortunately, until we are level 6, we're going to have to settle for the returning pike, purchased from Grat the Trader, who can be found in the Goblin Camp. This weapon returns to the owner when thrown, and the damage ain't too shabby either. Our bow choice is just a stat stick. The Bow of Awareness is purchased from Roa Moonglow. It can be found in the Shattered Sanctum in Act 1. This bow, when equipped, gives us a +1 to initiative rolls, greatly helping our pain point early. Here are some honorable mentions for Act 1 gear that didn't quite make the list. The gloves are uninhibited kushigo. It's a flat 1d4 damage to thrown attacks. On paper, it does sound stronger than the sparkle hands, but in practice, the sparkle hands apply stupidly stacked instances or lightning charges when used with our Act 2 weapon, granting us additional lightning damage that is a lot more than these gloves. Trust me, sweetie. The reason I didn't mention these weapons is because by the time you get level 6, you are near the end of Act 1. But with that being said, here are some Act 1 weapons that could be fun to try out. The very heavy greataxe is found on Berserk, the goblin in front of the windmill. This weapon has the largest single damage dice at 1d12, which is what we're mainly after with Elemental Cleaver. Plus, it's one of the heaviest weapons, weighing in at 9 kilos. Despite the extra weight, it really doesn't do any noticeable extra damage. And one final mention is the Defender Flail, bought from Jira, the quartermaster at the Creche. It grants you +1 AC as a passive, which is quite nice for survivability. Let's go over some consumables for Act 1. Starting with the elixir of the Colossus. They're pretty hard to come by at a trader, but eventually you'll find one sold as vendors refresh every long rest and level up. You can also craft these elixirs, and crafting them takes 3 chasm creepers, which you'll find in the Underdark or rarely from traders. The elixir of the Colossus increases your size, and yes, it does stack with our giant barbarian, giving our weapon attacks an additional 1d4 damage. The elixirs of Hill Giant Giant's strength increases your strength to 21 and are much easier to come by and farm. F4 stocks 3 at a time and can be refreshed every level up or long rest, making it the best way to stockpile these early. As for which one to use out of these, that's going to be personal preference and playthrough choices. The short version is the difference is very, very minor. The Colossus is slightly higher damage at 17 and 18 strength. It starts to fall behind at 20 strength, which you won't reach until Act 2. The Hill Giant strength is much easier to farm and gives you the option for different stat allocations if you wish. Sheriff in Act 1 and Tally in Act 2 sell Alchemist Fire, and you're going to need it later. And the last consumable I highly recommend to be paired with the Alky Fire are smoke powder bombs. You can get them from the same traders, though Tally has boatloads of them. They'll solve our AoE problem and go crazy with our damage riders later, blowing up any boss. Soon I'm going to show you a little trick and interaction that makes them a real recipe for destruction. From level 6 is where our belt finally pops off and gains our Frost Giant identity. Generally, at level 6, you should almost be done with Act 1 and will be on your way to Act 2. Let's go top to bottom again, starting with the Cold Brim Hat. To obtain this item, you first need access to Balthasar's room at Moonrise Towers, which you can easily get the Key of Sorrel following a conversation. Once in the room, pick up a heart off the table, interact with the top right part of the bookshelf, then finally insert the heart into the pedestal, unlocking a hidden room where you'll find the item you need. The Cold Brim Hat applies 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost when you inflict a spell condition. Oh, but Evelyn, we don't inflict a spell condition. I know, sweetie. Sit tight for now. I'll tell you a secret interaction that'll make our Frost Giant work. Once we get to the gloves, the Cloak of Protection. It can be bought from Trader Tally if you're alright but you're here. The Cloak of Protection adds a +1 to AC and saving throws. +1 might not seem like much, but it seriously adds to our survivability. Our chest piece is the Enraging Heart Garb, purchased from the Bugbear at Moonrise Towers. This gives the wearer +2 Constitution. It might not sound like much, but it's incredible for us as it gives a +1 to AC, thanks to unarmored defense, and more HP for us to stay in the fight. Oh, and you see this other passive? You can just ignore it. It doesn't work. Welcome to our second ingredient of our Frost Giant build, Winter's Clutches. Purchased from Esper in the Mountain Pass. I included these gloves in the Act 2 section because we can't really synergize with them until level 6. We'll use these to inflict 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost upon a target whenever we deal cold damage. So how do we deal cold damage? With Elemental Cleaver, we can enchant any weapon with 1d6 cold damage. So whenever we throw our weapon, we inflict Encrusted with Frost. Okay, remember the Cold Brim Hat we picked up earlier? Any spell condition inflicted upon a target also applies 2 stacks of Encrusted with Frost. There's a really interesting interaction where the spell condition can be encrusted with frost itself, which means the effect stacks twice per instance of damage, adding 4 turns of encrusted with frost whenever we attack. Okay, why does this matter? When an enemy has 7 or more turns of encrusted with frost remaining, they must succeed a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or take 1d4 cold damage and become frozen. Frozen is huge. It incapacitates the enemy for 2 turns, and on top of that, they are vulnerable to bludgeoning, thunder, or force damage, which is great for us because we can throw a bludgeoning weapon for double damage, or we can kick this frozen sculpture. For the rings in Act 2, let's start with the Callous Glow Ring. You'll find it in the vault, next to the room where you first meet Balthasar. This ring does an additional 2 points of radiant damage against creatures that are illuminated. Did you know that this ring procs twice thanks to Elemental Cleaver? It might only be 4 damage, but it adds up fast. Another thing to note is the DRS on thrown bombs are busted with this ring. I'll go over the full details in the Barbarian tech section. And the second choice for our ring is the Snowburst ring, found in the northern bedroom of Last Light In. A perception check is required to spot the hidden plank. If you manage to pass the check, you will find a ring that causes the wearer to create a 4.5 meter circle of ice around their target when dealing cold damage. Guess what? We're dealing cold damage all of the time when we use Elemental Cleaver. Even though this ring doesn't do damage, it remains one of my favorite choices because not only is seeing enemies fall flat on their ass after slipping is hilarious, but they also miss their turn, which is an incredible disable from our Frost Giant. Finally, we have a weapon worthy for our Frost Giant to use. A crab stick. The lightning jabber can be found at my favorite fishing spot near the Grand Mausoleum waypoint. If you're feeling a little cheesy, I find it very therapeutic to stand up on the hill here and refuel the cursed Kuatoa by shooting an arrow onto the beach. Since we're up so high, we can spend a few minutes fishing whilst the fish find it very windy. If you're feeling lazy, you can use a void bulb to get the big fish out in the open. However, if you want to take this fight on conventionally, the enemies are wet, so take advantage of the cold or the lightning enchant from your Elemental Cleaver. Once defeated, you can find the lightning jabber on the cursed Kuatoa chief, one of the only thrown weapons that actually applies on hit effects. We can deal an additional 1d4 lightning damage when throwing this crab stick. Do note that the lightning Elemental Cleaver does not stack, so I recommend just sticking with the cold enchant when wielding this. Just between you and me, sweetie, here's our little secret. If you wear the sparkle hands and use the lightning jabber, you'll get 6 lightning charges per throw attack. Yep, that's an additional 1d8 lightning every other thrown attack. The item synergies with this build blew my mind and kept me researching. Let's go over consumables for Act 2. The Potion of Everlasting Vigor can be obtained from Mirage at Moonrise Towers. If you're willing to convince Astarion to buy term, don't worry honey, he doesn't seem to mind as he's a vampire. This potion permanently increases your strength by 2. A Bloodlust. In Act 2, we deal a lot more damage and can pretty much kill an enemy each turn with our action. So it's here that I recommend purchasing a Bloodlust elixir to gain an additional action on kill. Water bottles can be found throughout the world, but I personally buy them in bulk from Ethel. We're going to need a lot of them, but not until we get Elemental Cleaver at 6, so remember to stock up early. We need them to apply vulnerability, so our cold and lightning Elemental Cleaver do double damage, which is very important for Merkel as he resists physical damage greatly. Whilst on this note, I highly recommend taking a bludgeoning weapon into this fight. I used a random ass 2d6 hammer in the footage here and managed to kill Merkel in 5 rounds with only the damage source being from my giant barbarian. Act 3 gear, let's do it. Most of this is actually located in Rivington, so I'll try to explain it all in chronological order. Our chest piece will be the Bone Spike Garb, purchased from Exvikia at the Rivington General. This piece of clothing grants us 15 temporary HP whenever we rage, reduces all incoming damage by 2, and retaliates with damage equal to our con modifier whenever we're hit with a melee attack. And I have to mention that the Callous Glow Ring procs when you get hit as well. Whilst in this area, we're going to purchase the Hellrider longbow from Ferg, the Sharon Trader, located at the refugee camp. This bow gives us a +3 to initiative rolls, which puts us in control of initiative without needing the alert feat. Fun fact, when you throw your weapon, it has a chance to inflict the fairy fire condition granted by this bow. Ferg also sells a Dwarven Thrower. It is a returning warhammer that does an extra 1d8 bludgeoning damage and will be the best in slot if you are a dwarf. If the target is large, huge, or gigantuan, the strike deals another 2d8 bludgeoning damage. Just note that if you really want to be a dwarf, you need to carry around boxes so you're tall enough to qualify as a giant. While we're on this tangent of bludgeoning weapons, consider the corpse grinder, looted from who I call the cuck guy at the beach fight. The 2d6 is a solid performer for your Elemental Cleaver. Just a reminder that bludgeoning damage is doubled against frozen targets, but since your kick deals bludgeoning, you do have a lot of freedom in your weapon choice. While still on the beach, there is a cave not too far from where you fought the cuck guy. Head inside the passageway to find a trapped chest near some paintings. Inside are the bone spike boots, granting you a passive 1.5 meter increase to jump distance and a per turn bonus action ability, Brutal Leap, a jump that can knock an enemy prone. These boots also give us a +1 to AC and saving throws, provided we're not wearing armor or holding a shield. I know I'm overloading you with so much choice for weapons, but I promise this is the last suggestion for Rivington. I would get cancelled by the BG3 community if I don't recommend the Norona, which is like throwing a thunderous cruise missile towards your enemies. To obtain this weapon, you first need to steal the ring of a Kabi at the circus. Not impressed, he will send you to the jungle, and do be careful as you only have one chance with one character here, so whatever you do, do not go down. Next to the exit portal is a chest containing the weapon. Nirona is a legendary +3 trident that deals a crazy 3d4 thunder explosion in a 6 meter radius when thrown. I do have to make this warning that the friendly fire from this weapon is generally what stops me from using it. The other passive passives from this weapon that might be relevant are Veil of the Wind, giving you a +3 meters move speed bonus and to jump distance, whilst also giving you immunity to fall damage. This weapon is also glowing, meaning synergy with our Callous Glow Ring. The only other important equipment that we need to grab in the lower city is the Amulet of Greater Health, which you'll find in the House of Hope. Did you know you can steal this amulet by placing something heavy like armor on the pedestal and then yoink it into your inventory, meaning you don't set off the alarm and you can leave the House of Hope without fighting Raphael, letting you grab this item early in Act 3. This amulet increases our constitution to 23, which is a +6 modifier onto our AC and 6 damage returned to melee attackers via the Bone Spike Garb. Oh, did I mention you are literally a raid boss in HP at this point? The go-to consumable for Act 3 will be Cloud Giant Elixirs, which will show up if you are level 9 and above. In the Rivington area, they can be purchased from Popper, Grishka, Damphalon, or Starlin Horst. Your go-to traders in the lower city are Derif, Halsik, Orage, and Oliver. The Cloud Giant Elixir increases our strength to 27, greatly increasing our damage potential with our thrown weapon, and Boot of the Giants thanks to Tavern Brawler. Righty right, some quick maths. It gives us +16 to our attack rolls, +16 onto our thrown weapon damage as well, and a final +16 onto Elemental Cleaver damage. This is all just for one throw attack. And don't get me started on the potential kick damage, but it's not all about raw damage. It improves your athletics so you can shove, throw, and kick bigger and heavier enemies. It is the go-to elixir if you want to chase some gains. Let's go over some alternate gear choices for Act 3. The Vestus Soul Rejuvenation can be purchased at Sorceress Sundries for a +2 to AC. But seriously, do you really want to look like that as a barbarian? Okay, these next two items are optional if you prefer more damage over applying Frozen. Whilst in the House of Hope, you can also obtain the Helldust Gloves off Harlow. A trick for this fight is to proc his reaction by forcing him to opportunity attack you so he doesn't use Ethereal Escape. The Helldust Gloves actually add a 1d6 fire damage onto your thrown attacks. Across from the boudoir where you got the gloves is an Infernal Gem where you need to pass a DC 10 Wisdom and then a DC 20 Arcana check to open the door. This DC 20 check can be rolled as many times as you want. The Helldust Helmet gives you immunity to critical hits and you cannot be blinded. You also have a +2 to saving throws against spells, which is quite nice in Act 3. There are still plenty of weapon choices in this act, and I'll go over some build variants in the next section. However, if you do find a spicy weapon, do let me know and see if you can claim the bounty. And yes, sweetie, I did try Balduran's Giant Slayer with Giant Form, and no, it doesn't stack. Moving on from my core Frost Giant build, here are some variants that I came across during my testing that not only are fun themed, but also busted and super strong. The Lightning. The Lightning version is cracked, and I'm not exaggerating. From Act 2 all the way to the end, the Lightning Jabber plus Sparkle Hands procs 6 lightning charges per throw, when it's really only meant to proc 2. That means you have an extra 1d8 lightning damage every second throw. Add in the wet status, and it gets stupid quick. Here's a little cheeky Evelyn life hack. Drop a bottle of water out of your inventory, then use your bonus action to make your enemy wet. There you go. Now your lightning damage from Sparkle Hands and the cold damage from your Elemental Cleaver will both deal double damage due to vulnerability. If you have a sweetie on your team with the ballast armor, have them stand close to your desired victim to apply piercing vulnerability via Aura of Murder. Now any piercing damage weapon thrown will do silly amounts of damage. There are not many encounters that can survive this level of destruction. Crabstick meta still going strong, baby. Here's a holy radiating orb version. The concept is simple. Spread Rat Orb to all your enemies, making them miss their attacks, which in turn makes you an evasion tank. Let me give you an example build. The Holy Lance helmet has a chance to deal radiant damage to enemies who miss. The Luminous armor spreads a Rat Orb in a radius whenever you deal radiant damage. And the Luminous gloves also apply 1 turn of Rat Orb whenever you inflict radiant damage. Where's all the radiant damage coming from? The Callous Glow Ring. Okay, I'ma be real with you. This would all be fine and balanced if Elemental Cleaver didn't apply the radiating orb stacks twice per throw. This means you are proccing 4 Rat Orb per throw, which gives the enemy a -4 chance to hit you. Oh, I forgot to mention, there's also gloves in the Open Hand Temple that grants 1d4 radiant damage to unarmed attacks if you do feel inclined to give your enemies some holy kicks. Speaking of kicking, since our kicks deal more damage paired with unarmed gear, what if we crank it up a notch? Add soul coins for 2d4 fire, and I know what you're thinking, so let me confirm that yes, in patch 8, soul coins are still bugged, giving Karlach 2d4 fire damage on unarmed attacks, and she doesn't need to be at low health or raging for it to work. The gloves are soul catching for 1d10 force, and many others for a seriously fun kick build. Let me know what other concepts you come up with in the comments, but let's move on to the final section of the video, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Frozen is a condition that makes the enemies lose 2 turns. To get the frozen status with our build, we have to first inflict 7 turns of encrusted with frost, and since we have Elemental Cleaver triggering our winter's clutches, which also then triggers our cold brim hat, we are inflicting 4 turns of encrusted with frost. So in just 2 hits we can reach this 7-turn cap where the enemy has to roll a DC 12 con saving throw or become frozen. Whilst frozen, I recommend either just leaving them be and focusing on other enemies while they miss the turn, or set up for a vulnerable attack on your victim. One thing to note, during testing I tried the boots of Stormy Clamor and they immediately got rid of the frozen condition on the same throw, which is why it didn't make the equipment list. Also, Karlach's fire damage from the soul coin burns away the ice. Here's a cheeky way to wet your enemy for the cost of a bonus action. Drop a water bottle from your inventory next to your desired enemy. Then use your kick to wet the enemy, setting them up for double damage when you use A, your crab stick that does lightning damage, and B, your elemental cleaver with a cold or lightning enchant. This is incredible damage. The strongest school of magic in BG3 is gravity. The greater height you suplex your enemies from, the more damage they will receive once they kiss the earth. This also applies to thrown weapons, in which the damage is calculated from both item weight and thrown height. Let me give you an example. Here I threw my weapon at Draw Ragslin, who was in the spider pit. Looking at the log, I can see I got an extra 11 bludgeoning damage throwing this 8 kilo weapon from a height of 11 meters. With that being said, I want to place an emphasis on how to position better to take advantage of this. The giant barb is fun in a sense that you can juggle your action economy between throws, mighty impel, and kicking to twist the battlefield scenario to your advantage. Let me give some examples. Let's say you wanted to throw this person off the roof. We can kick them closer to the edge, then suplex them off. Anyone near the water without guardrails, that's a kick or suplex into the drink, baby. Is someone threatening your spellcaster? Or throw your enemies closer to your paladin to smite them. The improvised weapon kidnap, for when you want to move an enemy, NPC or ally without any action cost. Quite simply, select improvised weapon. Select your desired target. As long as you can see a pathing line, it is going to work. Your character will then pick up whoever, then start moving towards your destination. You can cancel this anytime along the way. As long as you don't reach the destination, your character will stop and not slam your new friend into the ground. This has some really fun non-combat uses too. For example, creating a shopping district. The guide can be found on my channel. The throw kidnap is a variation of the previous method, but is a lot more useful as you can carry anyone for as long as you want, provided you do not cancel another animation. It's a fairly complex technique, so I'm going to throw in the guide from my other video. This one might get me in a watch list, but here is a fun speedrunning tech to spice up your next playthrough, leading to very unexpected and silly results. We're going to learn a new way to kidnap, because sometimes we need to get people out of hostile areas, take them for very long walks, or nab multiple people at once. Credits to Delph for helping me understand how to do it. This is achieved by standing as close as possible to an enemy. Select throw, left-clicking the enemy, left-clicking again to confirm the throw, and immediately right-clicking to cancel it. Now, the timing took me hours and hours worth of practice to get right, so don't feel discouraged if you don't get it the first time. It has to be frame perfect. In fact, you have to cancel it on frame 1 of the animation, but let me show you a metaphor that helped me learn this tech consistently. Imagine you are drumming your fingers on the table. Now I want you to drum your index, the middle finger, as fast as you can on your mouse to confirm and cancel the throw animation. There isn't much obvious feedback to let you know if you got it right or wrong, so here's how to diagnose the timing. If the enemy moves, you are too slow. If nothing happens, you are too fast. Now you can run around with your newly kidnapped friend. If you jump while carrying them, they'll disappear. To poop them out again, all you have to do is cancel an animation. Cancelling the fray animation is recommended, as I've had enemies be invisible when I cancel my jump animation. DRS throwing. Damage rider sources are crazy complex, but in a nutshell, check this out. The Callous Glow Ring or Sparkle Hands are very interesting interactions with other damage sources. They stack with each other like crazy and deal their damage multiple times. Speedrunners use the Callous Glow Ring for this reason, to gain additional instances of damage for minimal effort. Here in this clip, I throw an alky fire at the nurse. Okay, watch closely. I then throw a smoke powder bomb onto the fire. Note, this is not directly at an enemy, so what happened? By throwing the bomber onto the fire surface, the Callous Glow Ring propped itself in the fire multiple times and onto the nurses, and when one nurse died, it exploded for multiples thanks to the Cull of the Weak damage. You can combine the Sparkle Hands with the Callous Glow Ring for lots of fun. One final DRS throw tech I'll show you is you can drop a stack of bombs on the ground and throw this entire stack at once for a pocket nuke. Do note that the first stack of bombs you buy from a trader are bugged and will blow up in your face. Keep the first stack you buy separate from the rest by sending them to another character or to camp. Berserker Throw Barbarian versus Giant. I know the community will argue over which subclass is stronger, but in all honesty, until level 6, the Giant Barbarian is a watered down copy of the Berserker Throw Barbarian. Without the ability to use the bonus action throw, it is definitely weaker. That is until we get Elemental Cleaver. Elemental Cleaver alone has doubled some of the item interactions as you've seen in this video. On paper and in practice, a completely different beast. There are many enemies with physical resistances in the game, the most notorious run killer being Merkel. I tested this build against Merkel, and I can confidently tell you it really equalizes the battle. With the Elemental Cleaver damage plus the on-hits I've equipped you with, and one bottle of water, it will crush the Apostle into bone dust. Agree or disagree? I think I've made a compelling case around new barb subclass. Math does put me to sleep, but if you feel inclined to do some based on the new discoveries and interactions in this video, I'll add them to the pinned comment. Thank you so much for watching my Frost Giant build guide. I love this build so much, and I had an amazing time crushing on a mode with it. It was so much fun researching and testing all the item synergies for this video, and I sincerely hope it finds you well. Do let me know in the comments how you get on with this incredible build.